In this video, I'm going to review the worksheet, the ethical thinking and critical thinking worksheet, and what should go in each of the boxes. Understand that the goal of this worksheet is to fill the worksheet out, go through the process, and then use what you put in the worksheet to answer the ethical question assignment questions, which will then be graded. Okay. First of all, we're going to go through the process online of answering different questions. As you answer those questions and I give you feedback, then you'll put your answers in this worksheet. The first thing up here is going to be the ethical question. What is the ethical question that we're trying to work with? The next part, and this is important for the rubric, is why is that question important? Why are we having the discussion, and why is that question that you've developed, that ethical question you've developed, why is it important to go through this process? Why is it an important question? The next step, what you're going to do is you're going to put in your extreme viewpoints. So there's going to be one side of a viewpoint that's on one extreme, and then there's going to be a second viewpoint which is on the other extreme. So in these two boxes goes your extreme viewpoints, your black and white. Now for most of these issues, there's what's called the shades of gray. Now this has nothing to do with the books that came out, but the shades of gray involve what are viewpoints that exist between the extreme viewpoints. In the political situation that this country's in now, we tend to only have one extreme or the other, where in reality most issues that we're talking about have different shades of gray. So what are different shades of gray for the issue we're dealing with? What are different options that fit in between these two extreme viewpoints? After you do that, and you may come up with new shades of gray as you go through this process, you may think of more as you go along, then you're going to go to the back page, which looks like this. And now that we know the issue, we know our extreme viewpoints, we know our in-betweens, our shades of gray, we need information in order to go through the ethical process of answering this question. So what you need to do is, what are the facts about this issue? What are the facts that you know? So you can write down things that you know about the issue, science facts. You can also, and this is important, other questions that you have that remain about the issue. So what are other questions that you would need answered, that you feel you need answered in order to make an educated decision about this ethical issue? Now some of the things you write down here may not have answers, but again, you're going to write them down. And then one of the things you're going to do for this is you're going to go out and see if you can find the answers to those questions that you don't know the answer for. The other thing you have to think about when you go through this process is, who are the stakeholders in this issue? Who is going to be affected? Who is going to be affected by the answer to this ethical question? So it's your stakeholders. Now I only have 4 blanks here. You may have more than 4. Most issues do have more than 4. So who are the groups or people that are going to be affected by this ethical question? Now, what's the context of the stakeholder? Why do they have an interest in this issue? Why does the issue affect them? What is their perspective on the issue? So you need to understand where that group of people is coming from, where that group is coming from in terms of context and perspective. What or why do they think the way they do, or why are they influenced by this issue? Then, what bioethical principles are going to be given priority by this stakeholder? It can be more than one. It can depend on the stakeholder. It may be one side bioethical principle for one person, a different bioethical principle for another person. But what are the bioethical principles that are given priority by this group of people that you've put down as a stakeholder? Now you're going to use all this information. The facts that you know, the facts that you've found answers for, the facts that you don't know, that may affect your thinking. Who are the stakeholders that are affected by this ethical question? And when you do this, you also have to think about your bioethical principle. What principle of bioethics is governing your viewpoint on this issue? So the stakeholders matter, but obviously you also matter. So once you have this whole back page filled out, you're then going to go back to the front page and you're going to start putting in your tugs. Now what are tugs? Tugs are stakeholders, bioethical principles, facts, anything that you've done on that back page that influences or pulls you towards one viewpoint or the other. Now the way you use this is you just don't start listing tugs that pull you towards one viewpoint. You have to list the tugs by strength. So if there's a certain, let's say a stakeholder or a bioethical principle or a fact that really pulls you towards one side, then you put it very close to that side. It has a strong tug on leading you towards that viewpoint. If there is a fact, a stakeholder, or a bioethical principle that pulls you, but not really strongly, towards a viewpoint, then you put it more towards the center. Now, when you do this, you cannot have just tugs on one side and nothing on the other. When you are a good critical and ethical thinker, you have to be able to describe, and appreciate the other viewpoint. So you also need to put tugs on this side. So there may not be a tug that pulls you so strongly towards this viewpoint, but you need to have a list of tugs in here on this side of the pulling or the tug of war. So any tugs that pull you towards this viewpoint, you need to have listed also. After that, after you've gone through and looked at the question, figured out why the question is important, looked at the extreme viewpoints, the shades of gray, gone through and looked at the stakeholders, looked at the facts, looked at the bioethical principles of the stakeholders as well as your bioethical principles that influence you, you're then going to come up with your viewpoint. Now, I will tell you, this little box here, what you write in here, you're going to have to add to that when you actually answer the questions that you need to. So what is your viewpoint? Now, don't get stuck that your viewpoint has to be on one extreme or the other. Remember, you've got these shades of gray, and you may have thought of other shades of gray as you go through the process as possibilities for you in terms of how you feel about this issue. One of the things you're going to have to look at, and people have a hard time with this, is the context of your viewpoint. You're going to have to describe why you feel the way you do. And why the context, what is your context? So what about your past, maybe your age, your gender, your experiences, your academic background, your political beliefs, your religious beliefs? What about you is going to or pulls you towards that viewpoint? So one of the things you have to learn is that you have to understand why you feel the way you do about a certain issue and how you're influenced. One of the things you may find out is that your context is biasing you, that you haven't questioned that context, and so it may be biasing you towards one viewpoint or another. So this is one area that people don't do very well on, so you need to make sure you're thinking about your context, Again, now you've got this whole sheet filled out, front and back. You're going to use this form to answer the questions, the bioethical questions that will be part of the assignment. One of the things I'm going to ask is that when you fill these forms out, if you're on the online class, is that you're going to scan them either with a scanner on a printer or with your phone, but you are going to have to send me a copy of your form so I can see that you're on the right track. I want to make sure you're including everything you should before you start answering the questions. And again, I want to emphasize, use this paper to answer your questions. Many times I look at students' papers and they're missing things in the paper, but I see them on the worksheet. So you have to pull off the worksheet what you need for the questions. In another screencast, the next screencast, what I will do is I will show you how you're going to, what questions go with what parts of the worksheet. Okay, so go ahead and work through the issue and fill out your worksheet. Again, I'll put a due date for the copy that I need, but you want to do as much work on this as you can because it will make your life much easier as you go through the process. Also, we're going to work, depends on what semester it is, we may be using a wiki or a discussion board or a blog, but I'm going to ask you questions there, either as an individual or as a group. If you answer those questions, it will help you work through the worksheet.